everyone. Today we're going to just have a quick talk about um, exam number three, which you'll be taking next Monday. And this is just sort of like I guess, an online review session with me just telling you stuff. And then again, we have that general questions forum uh, that if you go down the forum page on our Sakai page, right, go to the forum tab, scroll down, so you'll see like this week's forum about the Washington film, Churchill. But if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see a forum for general questions. So I was going to ask that we use that for questions about the review session. I had intended to record this over the weekend. That did not work out with just trying to take care of the house stuff too. So I'm recording that this morning. As soon as I'm finished here, and this will not be a long video, it will be processed. I guess YouTube videos go through a processing period, and then I'll publish this. So my hope is that you'll get a chance to watch this today, and that we can, if you have questions, you submit them to me this afternoon, and I'll be monitoring that general questions forum this afternoon while I'm rewatching the Washington film, um, so I can begin looking at your posts on that. About that, and I thank you. So many of you got those in already. I just wanted to thank you also. You guys have been doing, most of you have been participating in all of the forums and making a good effort. Some of you have really made a really good effort in your sort of thoughts about the films we've been watching at this point of the course. So that's really good. Also, in the general questions, if you have any questions or comments about your project that you guys are working on, excuse me, please also um, submit those. Okay. Remember that the general questions forum is public, so we're all reading it. But any questions you have about the exam will be good because all your classmates will see them also. Okay. Again, if you're not taking the exam, I want to state this now, and I'll put this in an announcement also. Um, I'm going to give the exam next Monday, the 27th, exam number three. If you do not take the exam next Monday, and you'll have all day to do it, okay, so it'll be open book, open note. It's going to be a couple hours. I'm going to have it set up as an online exam, um, so that it's timed. Um, and no, I guess what I should just do is have it submitted through the assignments tab. So here's what we'll do. I'll ask you guys to do it as a Word doc, type up your answers and everything as a Word document, and get it to me by a certain time that evening, Monday. If you do not take it by Monday, I will not be giving any extensions. I've given you guys several weeks' notice to let me know whether or not you're going to take the test or not. I think 3 people have emailed me to tell me that they weren't or they were. So if I do not, I'm just going to put the test out there. And if I don't have one for you by next Monday night, um, there will be no more opportunity to take the test at that point, and you will have to keep the two exam scores you have. Okay, that's how we're going to do it. All right, now this exam is only on chapters 7, 8, and 9. Remember, we just did maybe about a third of chapter 9 in this class, up to um, looking at some of those sort of models of an organization looks like. Okay, so again, the exam will be the same in format as our previous 2 exams, some slight differences, which I'll discuss in just a minute. First section will be, again, true or false, just as before. These are just statements about the information you learn in chapter 7, 8, and 9. What are organizations? Um, questions about community. And you just say if the statement's true or false, right? Okay, so there's again 10 of those. Then there will be a multiple choice section, again, that is based on these same sort of informational type of questions um, from chapters 7, 8, and 9. Um, Section 3 of the prior 2 examinations asked you to label the relational leadership model. You will remember that I put a diagram page on there and you had to label it. Section 3 of this exam also will be about the relational leadership model, but at this point, you need to understand rather than a diagram that you're going to label, it's going to be a matching section. Okay, so they're going to be statements that were provided about elements of community. Okay, so in chapter 7, there is a section by Gardner and Gutekunst that discusses elements of connecting relational leadership to elements of community, and that's table 7.1 in chapter 7. So you need to understand um, how relational leadership model components look, what they look like, how they're manifested in a real community. So there are statements about sort of manifestations of leadership, and you need to match which component of the relational leadership model matches up with those statements about community. So there are 5 matching questions. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and you need to put the right letter to the right number in that section. They're worth 3 points each, 15 points. Okay, so that's based on table 7.1. There will be a quick answer section, again, as we had last time. You need to understand SMART goals. Okay, that's in chapter 9. Or was it chapter 8? I believe it was in chapter 9. Let me double check that real quick. I am flipping through the textbook at light speed. That appears to be in chapter 9. Anyway, make sure that you understand uh, SMART goals. Okay, and I discussed these things in the lectures. So one thing you might do moving forward. Sorry, I'm not looking at the camera. Apparently, that's bad video form when you're doing this. Chapter 8. Okay, so that would be in chapter 8. You could go back and rewatch the lectures for explanation of some of these things. Right. There will be, as I mentioned, there's an essay on this exam. But it's not based on Churchill or Washington because we finished up reading those books. We're actually just talking about those books now as part of our discussion forums about films, right? And we'll be finishing that up now with this film about Washington. We'll be done actually talking about those books after this current forum. Um, I will have a couple more films for you, but they'll be about other leaders or groups of leaders. But 2 important things I want you to know are Scott Peck's model for true authentic community, which was in chapter 7, and Tuckman's 5 stages of group development, which were in chapter 8. Okay, so you'll remember we talked about these at length in the lectures on chapter 7 and 8. There was Scott Peck's stages of the development of authentic community, true authentic community. And then in chapter 8, there were Tuckman's 5 stages of group development. They're both going to be on the exam, so make sure you understand them both well. And make sure that you understand the differences between them because there are some similarities and students sometimes conflate them. That means sort of confuse them and mush them together and make them the same thing in their minds, right? So make sure that you are able to distinguish between the two and explain them. Okay, they're very close in some respects, but different in others. So make sure that you can articulate that. Okay, and that's pretty much what you're going to need to sort of have a sense of. Again, things you need to understand are the importance of community. You know why a community is important, what it is. Um, Thinking about relationships in an organization or group, right? Um, Elements of community, understanding community as a group and an attitude, right? Understanding the role of diversity in a community, understanding different types of communities, right? There are geographic communities, there are non-geographic communities, there are electronic communities. Just understanding those sort of differences and what we mean when we say community. Community can be as much a feeling or an attitude as it is an actual grouping of people, right? Um, Understanding what's the relationship between the relational leadership model and community. Um, Remember Martin Buber's conversation in the textbook. This was in chapter 7 about a true community from his I and Thou book from 1958. This is on page 293. That was an important book, so make sure you sort of understand um, Martin Buber's stuff. That's on, again, 293 in your textbook. And then Scott Peck, excuse me, pages, stages. Scott Peck's 4 stages of developing authentic community. Make sure that you are familiar with that, right? And that you understand that being a community is a process. It's not an end state, right? Community is a constant process. I think that was maybe really the big thrust of that chapter, is getting you to understand that being a community is an ongoing process that requires work. You ever heard that like marriages require work, right? The same thing, a community, whether it's a group holding any kind of a group, committee, board, band, club, it's work. Keeping that community requires attention to people and that process. You have to be attentive to that process. And then communities have to recognize when they need to attend to the cycle of rebuilding a genuine community. When maybe the community is going awry, maybe it's not where it needs to be. And at that point, there's a rebuilding of community required. And this is also when you are attending to the process of community and maintaining community or building community, you will see in that process is where you would be shown because you are paying attention the need for rebuilding. Okay. Um, Chapter 8, just reviewing that again real quickly. This is about understanding groups. We're talking about interacting in teams and groups in chapter 8. So first, understanding groups. What is a group? Right, 3 or more people interacting and communicating interpersonally over time in order to reach a goal. Right. What were the 3 key dimensions of a group? Okay, purpose, structure, and time. So remember, um, go back, and if you need to go back through the lecture, or you can certainly just, reread what you have hopefully noted, highlighted, or taken notes on in your textbook, right? The 3 key dimensions of groups are purpose, structure, and time. And then again, there was Tuckman's 5 stages of group development from this chapter, chapter 8, right? Forming, storming, norming, performing, and lastly, adjourning if necessary, right? Or as required. And then the last section of that chapter that was important to know about was the dynamics in groups, that there were different group roles, right? There are group building roles, there are task roles, right? There are dysfunctional roles, so remembering all that. There were group norms, the establishment of group norms. That was basically the this is how we roll, right? Which is sort of it's kind of a combination of the norming and performing, right? This is who we are. This is what we do. This is how we do it. I should have just queued up the music here, right? That would have been fun. Confetti coming down, right? Lights going. But yeah, I just don't have all that tech here for you. Sorry. And then creative conflict, right? Understanding the value of creative conflict. Not all conflict is bad, right? Um, Creative conflict helps us to avoid organizing chaos. You'll remember in Scott Peck's 1987 model in chapter 7, in the stages of developing true authentic community. It talks about we have this difference between organization and emptiness, right? So creative conflict that's just talked about in chapter 8 is very much that emptying, right? Let's put it all out on the table, right? And that helps us not organize around chaos, right? So you can read a little more on that on page 327 in your textbook. Group decision making, how that gets done. And then lastly, yeah, I had it right here in my notes, SMART goals, um, and the explanation of what SMART goals are. And that's pages 337 to 339 in your textbook. Understanding SMART goals. And again, SMART goals are something I really recommend that all of you take up for yourselves. If you were a student in the Leadership Institute who joined that organization last fall, while I was still directing it, you would have been asked to um, make a SMART goal for yourself at the orientation meeting, right? So that's a very important thing. Have those goals for yourself that you can hold yourself accountable to, right? Sometimes it's good to let another person in on that who holds you accountable. All right. And then in chapter 9, again, we only did maybe a third of that chapter. And I'm holding, again, I think I mentioned to you guys in the lecture, I'm holding out really the rest of the book from that point forward for another course I'm developing for a Leadership Studies 2 course that I'm going to have a, intro leadership studies would be the prereq for that. And so students would have their book. And I would tell them if you're planning on taking the second course, hold on to your book. So that'll help students save a little money in the future. So understanding and renewing complex organizations. First, leadership is understanding leadership in an organization, right? What it looks like. So the context really emphasizes 5 aspects of the relational leadership model because organizations are collections of groups, right? So understanding the difference between groups and organizations, right? And essentially, chapter 9 tells us that organizations are collections of groups, right? Understanding why do organizations exist, right? And they're just the main things are organizations as complex systems, right? So the first is leadership. Leadership in an organization. Why does an organization have leadership? It exists to help the groups within the organization to work together toward in a common direction. Um, so it's to help an organization accomplish its purpose, essentially, right? That's the reason for leadership in an organization, the only reason. And then we have organizational structures, right? If we look at the figures on pages 363 and 364, it talks about sort of traditional organizational structures, inverted organizational structures, and then that sort of web um, structure. And the important point being there is understanding that the structure is not the organization, right? It's just simply the way the organization is set up to function, right? And going back to chapter 8, really, it says that really form follows function, right? The idea that how a group is structured or organized. Now we're talking about organizations, not groups. But when it talks about groups, groups are organized in such a way that allows them to achieve their purpose, right? So form, the way it's set up, follows function, what it's set up to do, or I mean, what it intends to do, right? Form follows function. This is really the same sort of principle here when you're talking about organizational structures, right? The structure may vary depending upon the objects of the organization. Um, and then lastly, the organization mission, vision, and core values, right? And this just really gets to statements about why the organization exists, an expression of the organization's values, so that everyone is clear about the reasons that they do things, and about the way in which, in other words, this speaks to process, the way in which we go about our work based upon what our expressed values are. Right. So these are important things to understand about organizations. But that really only takes us up to about page. Let's see here, 360. Oops, I got to get back into 200s. There we go. Yeah, I would say that you're really only going to have to understand up to about page 367 in the text. Okay, 367. sort of where we lay off talking about mission statements and why they're important. Okay, so I think this is the last video I'm doing, unless I do a thanks for the class video toward the end. You guys have been a fun group to teach. Enjoyed our conversations in class. And I'm enjoying your forum conversations that you're having with each other. You guys are, some of you are really digging deep into the films and thinking about them and what they mean, and really trying to make those connections to the reading that we've done in the class. And so I find that encouraging. I would also mention to you, since we are in the registration period right now, that you might want to look at the leadership studies minor, perhaps, if you've enjoyed this class, and you might be interested in getting a minor in leadership. It's a 15 credit minor if you're an arts and science student. It's a 12 credit minor if you are a business student. In fact, if you're a business student, you already are required to take organizational behavior as a requirement of the business school program. So, having taken this class also, you're already halfway to that minor. So, I would encourage you to look into um, the requirements for the business minor, and I can certainly email them to you if it's something you're interested in. I'm the director of the minor for arts and sciences, but I worked with Dr. Carol Kaufman Scarborough in the business school to develop. We developed both minors together. She directs the business one, I direct the arts and science one. And so, if you're an arts and science student and you, again, might be interested in the minor, one of the things you want to do if you do want to declare a minor in leadership studies is to call the registrar's office and declare that you are minoring in that. And so that will be put on your transcript. People in academic advising will know, et cetera. So, and it's also good for us to have the data for reporting purposes. So we know how many students are pursuing the minor, and it helps us to make the course for the case, excuse me, for additional coursework. I think we have 18 or 19 students currently minoring in leadership studies, which is good because it's only been around for about 2 years now, so 2 or 3 years. So that's encouraging. And we've had a number of our first group of minors graduate last year. So we have, I think, 17 or 18 currents. So we'd be happy to have more. And again, we'll be adding more classwork. And uh, if you're an arts and science student, you would take the intro leadership studies. You would have to take organizational behavior in the business school. One communication-based class, which could be professional writing, could be designing for the web, it could be public speaking, and then two upper level courses that are sort of based in critical thinking, or they're sort of, and these are across all the departments in the College of Arts and Sciences. So it's set up so it doesn't matter if you are a sciences major, a philosophy major, there's ethics courses, right? A history major, because we study leaders and policy decisions, psych, um, any of the sciences. I think we have 9 to 12 math and science classes that are available for students. Economics, so all majors can minor in leadership. I would encourage you to check out the requirements for it. Okay, so again, thank you. I'll be checking out the general questions forum this afternoon, looking for your questions about the exam. Again, please inform me if you plan to or do not plan to take the exam. And if when I post it, you'll have all day next Monday to complete it. And if I do not get an exam back from you by 11:55 Monday, you will no longer be able to take it. Okay. Um, so thank you, and it's enjoyed working with you guys, and I'll look forward to your projects coming in. Okay. Thank you.